Okay, so Master Shantideva says, look, it's extremely important to watch yourself and be aware of what you're doing, but it's very difficult at this stage in our bodhisattva careers, at this stage in our spiritual path. It's very difficult to keep awareness of our thoughts and our behavior, especially New York City, right? I mean, walking down the street in New York City, there's constant bombardment, constant sensory stimulation. And we went over to Dumbo this weekend with the kids, and it's like, wow, it's so calm over here. You know? I mean, it was just like, we're sitting under the bridge. Yeah, Brooklyn, yay, Brooklyn, right? I mean, we're sitting under the bridge with like the subway trains going over the Manhattan Bridge, and we're going like, wow, it's so quiet, I mean, it's like, come on, So, this tremendous sensory stimulation we have living here in the city. And Master Shantideva addresses it. He says, look, if you're going to pay attention, if you're going to have watchfulness, he gives us very beautiful advice. He says, it's important to be able to succeed in that. And it's very easy in some respects to pay attention to what other people are doing. Like, oh, they just lied, or they just, did something they shouldn't have done. I mean, and that's where our focus tends to be, right? The people around me are not behaving properly. It's much harder to focus on oneself and say, oh, I'm not behaving properly. Much easier to watch other people as to whether they're behaving properly. So, Master Shantideva says, look, you have to perfect this ability to pay attention to your mind and what's going on with your mind. And having too much sensory stimulation is a problem if you're going to do that. He says, if you have too much sensory stimulation, it's very difficult to maintain awareness of your own mind and recollection of its content. So he says, if you have too much coming in, you're going to lose your awareness and your mindfulness. So, I mean, I suppose you have the choice of retiring to a monastery, right, where there's not much going on and you don't have much sensory stimulation. Everyone wraps themselves in a sheet, it's just kind of like you sit there and you pay attention to your thoughts, hopefully. Or you can move to like some remote area like, Kansas or wherever, I don't know. And Arizona, right, where there's not much going on. And just be like, well, the airport has, one runway and 2 gates, and not much happens around here. Then you have less stimulation. But if you live in New York City and you're going to stay in New York City, then there's a practice that he talks about, a special practice, dropping your eyes, to help maintain watchfulness. And he says, we're mostly visual in our stimulation, right? This visual sense is our primary sense. It's the thing that we most respond to. And so Master Shantideva says, look, you have to develop this practice of cutting off your stimulation. And so start with visual stimulation, right? He says, so you walk down the street and you see so much, there's so much going on, right? I mean, depending upon your interest, if you're into clothes, you're looking at everybody's clothes, right? If you're into hair, you're looking at everybody's hair, shoes, or whatever it might be, right? So cars, whatever. So his point is that keep your eyes down, just look down, cut off the sensory, cut off this visual stimulation, and you can do that by just not looking. Just don't look at things. He says when you're walking down the street, look down. And he says it's a big practice for monks or the sangha, and it's to just keep your eyes down and not look at things. But it's good for everybody walking around the city too. It's not like there's some new wonderful store, that just opened up that you have to see. There's a certain number of pizza shops, a certain number of clothes stores, a certain number of chocolate shops, a certain number of cafes, car dealerships, and I've seen it all. I mean, maybe there'll be a new color and a slightly new shape, but we don't really have to look in the windows and see it, right? We've been there and done that. So there's no benefit to it. It crowds the mind, and we lose our recollection, we lose our watchfulness, So everything repeats itself. It's just the same on the street, Except for shoes, they always come with new shoes. But still, if you're looking down, it's not what Master Shantideva says, okay? Or if you're a music person, or an auditory person, you hear a song and it can stay in your mind all day, or for days at a time, or you just completely occupy the mind and drive anything else out of the mind, right? So, the New York Times on Sunday, right? It's like a couple of hours for the Sunday Times, and you can be assured that you're not going to remember anything you read 2 weeks later, I mean, it's just wasted time, it's just idle time, and it's just, it goes away and our life is wasted. So Master Shantideva's point is to be a human and to have human eyes is a rare and precious thing, and don't waste it, and don't waste the time, and don't waste the opportunity, and make sure that the eyes are not betraying our awareness, you know, and our mindfulness, and our thinking the virtuous thoughts that we need to do. So anyway, there's the art of concentrating on something and keeping our mind on something. And so the homework asks about Master Shantideva's advice on the eye practice and the 4 divisions of the eye practice. So let's see. Yeah. So the general advice is on how to look with your eyes, which is to just look down. This first instruction is general advice on how to look with your eyes, which is, you know, if something's coming up that's going to cause you to lose awareness and lose focus with your mind, then look away. You know, it could be a person you like that you don't know, a person that you don't like that you do know, or anything else. You know, just, you know, a person, something that's going to irritate you. You know, just look down, just look away. And so you just don't go there. It doesn't occur, right? And so in general, we cut the stimuli. We cut off the stimulation that's coming in, and focus on our thoughts and focus on thinking the thoughts we want to think, right? So it's very difficult, but there's great benefit of concentrating on what you want with your mind. So, so if you get tired from looking down, you know, you've been looking down and you've sort of gotten tired of looking at gray, dirty pavement, you know, hour after hour, walking around the city. He says, well, if you get tired from looking down, then what to do, you know? He says, you know, you can kind of get bored after a while. Your mind can get a little dull after a while from too much. And he says, well, just look up and refresh yourself. He says, you know, look up, look at the trees, look at the sky, look at the people and what they're doing. And, you know, no big deal, right? Just look up and refresh yourself. And so he says, you know, if you think you're gonna bump into someone you know, for example, if you do bump into someone you know, it's not like this thing of like, I can't look at you, I have to look at the ground. You know, don't be weird. That's what he says, really. You know, if you have this practice of looking down and you meet people you know, it's not like you shouldn't look them in the eye or something, right? It's not like you shouldn't have a normal conversation and just be polite and, you know, have the conversation and then get on with your day, right? It's like, don't be don't have some bizarre behavior about looking down at the ground and not looking at things. Don't become like a social weirdo or something, right? So, you know, have a normal conversation, engage in a nice interaction, you know, and then go back to looking down, you know. He says, you know, and if you need to look up and refresh yourself, take the opportunity to look and see if you're going to walk into a pole or something, you know. Or, you know, maybe you have to look up and, you know, see if you know, you're in a dangerous neighborhood or you're about to walk into a pack of muggers or something, right? You know, or if you're going to cross the street, by all means, look up and see if there's traffic. You know, it's not like you're supposed to be doing some kind of strange and dangerous thing. So, but then, you know, after you check for problems, then you look back down. And New York City, there's a lot of mental illness, you know, manifest and not manifest. And you know, just by looking away, looking down, don't engage it, and don't, you know, don't have that stress. There are tremendous stresses living in New York City. You know? Tremendous energy. It's things which are very wearying, draining, tiring, right? And the amount of stimulus we receive living here is, you know, is probably too much for the human mind. You know, I mean, it's perhaps even dangerous for the human mind. So this idea is you know, cut off the visual stimuli by looking down, reduce the stress level, you know, reduce the stimulation level, and you know, you may be less nervous and you may just feel better even in an ordinary way by doing that, let alone having the ability to maintain concentration and watchfulness, and to have a less distracted mind. You know. Then the mind is focused on something nice in an intentional way, rather than being bombarded with things which may not appear to be so nice. You know, just from looking around at all the craziness on the streets, right? And garbage and whatever else might be there, right? So, you know, and at first you might be like a little bit schizophrenic, like, you know, it's like, I want to look, but I can't. I want to look, you know, it's like if we were sitting in a cafe booth, you know, you're like, don't look, you know, I want to look, don't look. Right? So, you know, you get this thing, well, maybe there's somebody behind me, I should be looking behind me, you know, but no, I'm going to look down at the ground, you know. I remember when this was first taught by Holy Mission Michael, one of the monks there, he's like, I'm walking down the street and people are saying to me, have some self-confidence, young man. Stop looking down at the ground. Look up. You know? Feel good about yourself. You know. You know. And then it'd be like, I was looking down at the ground in the subway, and I was just looking down at the ground, and I leaned against the column on the subway, and I didn't see the wet paint sign because I was looking down, It's just like, you gotta look up sometimes, So anyway, there are 3 special circumstances under which Master Shantideva says no problem to look up, And the implication here is by listing 3 exceptions, the implication is you should be otherwise not, right? Except in these 3 special circumstances. Right? And he says, look, you're going to be like a little bit like a zombie like this. You're just going to be walking around going like, I'm not going to interact with anything, I'm not going to look at anything, I'm not going to think about anything except what I want to think about, right? I'm going to decide what I'm going to think about. I'm not going to just have random scattered thoughts and have my mind drawn out to anything that happens to come by, So it's a real practice. It takes some training, it takes some effort. So, but you see people who start to train in this way. I mean, some people have this 6 times commitment, Tundruk. You see people who are training themselves to watch what's in their mind constantly. They'll start to say something and they'll just stop themselves mid-sentence. Just be like, oh no, I'm not going to go there, I'm not going to say that. And that's a great virtue. That's very powerful. That's recollection and that's watchfulness. If someone's starting to say something and recognizing that they're not supposed to be saying it and then just cutting it off. It's a very, very holy thing. And that's the point of what we're doing, right? Halfway through that thought, we stop ourselves. That's why we're here and that's why we're having these classes, is to be able to do that. And that's the whole point of these classes. And that's the essence of Buddhism, is to just stop ourselves, from engaging in these negativities. So, it becomes very beautiful and very sweet. And we become sweeter people and life becomes sweeter as a result, right? We're just simply not collecting the bad karmas that we were collecting otherwise. So, anyway, Master Shantideva says, generally speaking, you'll be like a zombie at the beginning. You start to say something, and you realize most of what we say is useless. Most of what we talk about is totally, utterly irrelevant to any kind of spiritual anything or any kind of virtue of any sort, right? And so we have to pay attention. I mean, if we have tantric initiation, there's like 250, vows that we're committed to. That we have to be paying attention to and keeping bodhisattva vows and refuge commitments and the rest. So, anyway, 3 instances. Master Shantideva says, don't go crazy about watching your thoughts. He says, one is if your life is threatened, just some kind of dangerous situation going on, don't just sit there and go, let me be really mindful about my thoughts right now. Just run away, or do what you have to do quickly and reflexively without thinking about it too much. If you're in some kind of very serious situation, you have to act quickly and forcefully, then do it and don't sit there. So, the second he says, if you're engaged in some kind of virtuous celebration, like of the 3 jewels or whatever, it's like, if you're doing some great virtuous thing and you're really happy, then go for it, great, no problem, just be happy, right? And the third one is if you're doing something of great benefit for other living beings, then just go for it, don't hesitate, don't overanalyze, don't over-examine and say, should I think of like this or shouldn't I? If you're doing some great virtue, don't hesitate, go with it. Okay, so this is the essence of which perfection. Maintaining this kind of mindfulness is the essence of which perfection? Concentration, a little bit. Perfection might this relate to? Yeah, ethics, right? I mean, really paying attention and really being mindful and recalling our behavior is the essence of ethics, right? The perfection of ethics, right? The second perfection, right? I mean, it's very necessary to be aware of what we're going to do, what we're about to do to keep our ethics. Right? Am I about to break my ethical commitments or not? Right? Am I keeping my ethical commitments or not? That's recollection, watchfulness. So, the first perfection is what? Giving, generosity. And as we go through the 6 perfections, each of them is more important, powerful than the prior. So the 6 perfections are in a particular order for a reason. And each is considered to be more serious and more important than the one before it. Okay, so keeping our ethics is more serious and more important than giving, for example. Right? It's considered to be a higher level than number 1. Number 3 is a higher level than number 2. And in the bodhisattva bhumis, the bodhisattva levels, it's that way. So as we go through the bodhisattva levels, we're working on the 6 perfections in order as we progress through the bodhisattva bhumis. There's an increasing sophistication of the 6 perfections. So, for example, number 2 is more difficult than number 1. Number 3 is more difficult than number 2. And as we go through the bodhisattva bhumis, what happens, how do we get to the first bodhisattva level, the first bodhisattva bhumi? Remember? Seeing emptiness directly with bodhicitta in your heart. It's a bodhisattva level, so you have to have bodhicitta, right? So when you see emptiness directly for the first time with bodhicitta in your heart, you've attained the first of the 10 bodhisattva levels. And you have to work through all 10 to become enlightened, right? So, Holy Geshe Michael has clearly said he's moved past the first bodhisattva bhumi, which is, I rejoice, I'll take 10% of that merit, right? But then, if you're on the first bodhisattva bhumi, you're focusing on the first perfection, right? Giving. Now, does that mean you're not practicing the other perfections? What do you think?
At least then if you do one well, you do the other ones.
What do you think?
Just never know.
Why?
Because you constantly practice it on.
Well, what if they're not?
Like shame on them.
Yeah, right? Then they don't deserve to be on the first bhumi, right? Well, look, wisdom is the 6th perfection.
So you
can't even get to the first bhumi unless you have the ultimate form of the 6th perfection, which is seeing emptiness, right? So obviously you've attained the highest perfection, you've practiced the highest perfection quite well to make it onto the first bhumi. So yeah, you're practicing the other perfections when you're on the first bhumi. But the point is that one is particularly focused upon the first perfection, giving. You know, one is developing a very, very powerful capacity and perfecting giving in a very, very powerful way on the first bhumi, while doing the others also. But the focus is a very powerful practice of the first perfection. You know? So, in a very significant way. And then when you're on the second bodhisattva level, you're practicing all 6, right? But practicing ethics in a very, very powerful and advanced way. And so like that, right? And so, similarly, when we're picking a perfection to work on, if we're going to say, I'm going to work on, and we said earlier, we pick a perfection and work on it for 3 or 6 months, right? Does that mean you don't do any of the other perfections for the 6 months? No. I mean, obviously, we want to engage in all the perfections as bodhisattvas, but to really focus strongly on one of the perfections, mainly, as our main practice, right? Same point. Get good at it, right? And wait till we've gotten good at the perfection of giving until we then go on to the next one as a main focus. Obviously, we have to keep our ethics while we're giving, right? Even though it's the second perfection. Chankya Ronpa Dorje, who is the teacher of the Emperor of China, Gawalka Rinpoche, in a former life, the first Chankya, he gives an instruction about the order of the 6 perfections and why they're in that order and why it's important to go through the perfections in order and to practice the perfections in order. So he says that not being concerned with possessions and not being attached to possessions, which is an important element of which perfection? Giving. I mean, if we're attached to stuff, we're not going to give it away. If we're attached to our money, we're not going to give it away. If we're attached to our food, we're not going to give it away. Right? So he says, look, this perfection of giving is this kind of loosening of our attachment to things, right? And not being too attached, there are 2 important elements which support an ethical way of life, right? If we're not attached to things, we're not going to hurt somebody to get them, right? So the act of giving, the pursuit of the perfection of giving, the loosening of our grasping to our things and to objects, right? Material objects, not worrying too much about material objects, makes it much easier for us to keep our morality. Because we're not going to lie to somebody to get money because we're not that attached to it. Right? We're not going to hurt somebody to get their partner because we're not that attached to them. Right? So, we're not going to crave, right? And that sets the stage for the perfection of morality, perfection of ethics. Because we're not doing non-virtue to get things that we crave and that we ignorantly like in this life, right? So the perfection of giving naturally supports the second perfection, the perfection of an ethical way of life, which includes restraining oneself from negative actions. Right? Okay? So trying to restrain ourselves from doing things and saying things which harm others, right? What do you think that supports? Patience, right? Not getting angry, right? If we're making efforts at leading an ethical way of life, like I'm going to be virtuous, I'm not going to, behave negatively towards others, then when circumstances are right to get angry, we already have a lot of practice at behaving in a virtuous way. And the third perfection involves kind of endurance, really, over a long period of time. I was speaking to someone earlier today about it, speaking to a friend earlier today who was very discouraged and perhaps having a hard time because of her mental afflictions being so deeply rooted and so hard to fight and so hard to overcome. And she was saying, how discouraging it is and how difficult it is. And there are a lot of hardships to put up with, in this path and in this practice. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of commitment. And it can involve fighting our mental afflictions over a long period of time. They don't give up easily. And, we could spend all day fighting a mental affliction and all night fighting a mental affliction and be exhausted by it. It's to not get depressed or lose our courage or, to just continue to work hard, restraining ourselves from hurting other people. It's a lot of work. And it's a lot of effort. If we have a really bad habit that we're trying to break, it's hard and it's tiring and it's discouraging. And it takes a lot of effort and willingness to fight the fight over and over and over again over a long period of time. So some kind of perseverance, to stop ourselves from doing the bad habit. And the exercise of that perseverance, builds up this habit, right, of joyful effort, which leads to joyful effort. This over and over and over again, restraining oneself from negative actions and fighting the good fight and fighting the same battle over and over and over again, day after day, week after week, year after year, to try to change ourselves. It's hard, and we persevere and we have courage, and eventually, we succeed. And that perseverance flows naturally, right, into joyful effort. Yeah.
I fail to see where the joy is in restraining negative affliction.
Yeah.
It's a rotten job that keeps coming back over and over again. There's nothing about it I find joyful. And in fact, the more you do it, the more you notice that you need to do it. Where do you feel good about that?
What's the connection between patience and joyful effort, right? I mean,
I see the effort, I don't see the joy.
Yeah. Well, we went from ethics, so we went from giving, right? We went from giving to ethics, right? And we went from ethics to patience, right? And now we're going from patience to joyful effort, right? So, John, did you want to say something?
Well, when you see the benefits of patience, it seems to naturally lead to joyful effort.
No. The point that they make is that this is a hard fight, right? That's what you said. This is a hard fight. And it's a lot of work over a long period of time. And fighting the hard fight, and going through that huge mental struggle and learning to overcome those things and succeeding in overcome those things leads to a certain kind of satisfaction, a certain kind of happiness. Right? But that, I guess, supposes some kind of positive feeling about what one is doing, right? Like, I feel good about what I'm doing. And that's what he's saying. What he's saying here is fighting the fight, eventually you'll feel good about what you're doing. Eventually you get enough result and you get enough positive outcome to start to feel good about what you're doing. Right? It's like, I fought the fight and I won some battles and it felt really good, you know? And it felt really good to fight those battles and win. And I feel really good about some of these outcomes. And so he's saying that fighting the battles and having the positive outcome naturally leads to joyous effort, which is enjoying doing good things, right? He's saying if you're practicing an ethical way of life, and I mean, if we go through it, if we're giving, we're not attached to things, if we're keeping our ethics, right? What was the third one? Practicing patience, and then meaning not getting angry, right? Having perseverance, fighting the fight, struggling in the struggle, struggling not to get angry, struggling, to be virtuous, struggling to restrain ourselves when it's really hard to restrain ourselves, right? Struggling to be virtuous when it's really hard to be virtuous. If we're doing all those things, at some point, we really feel good about it. And there's a natural, he's saying it naturally flows that we will start to enjoy goodness. And we will start to enjoy doing good things. And that we will naturally start to spend more and more and more time just pursuing virtue and goodness. And then it will be a natural outcome of the first perfections, the first three perfections, that we will want to put more time and energy into helping people, being virtuous, doing virtuous things, and it feels good. And that, that those struggles lead to overcoming mental afflictions, and then we feel happy about them. And that leads to doing more and more virtue. Joyful effort. I mean, the war with our own mind leads to being happy about doing goodness, is the point that's made. And I don't know, in Skishy Michael, I remember him saying, it's like, if he's not around scriptures, he starts to feel unhappy, It's like if he's not around holy words and holy things, and if he's around ordinary things, it's like such an unpleasant thing, because it's just such suffering. And so this, I think the point here is that somehow our life changes. I mean, this is my interpretation, okay, so take it for whatever you will. I think the point here is somehow we change and our life changes so that we're attracted to goodness and we want to be engaged with goodness and virtue. And the other things are not of any much interest and not much of any appeal. And it's just like, I don't want to do those things. I want to help people. I want to engage in virtue. I want to be exposed to virtue. I want to be around virtuous people. And it's just this natural flow, this natural progression which occurs with the fourth perfection in that way, which is, it's hard work, but it's satisfying, and I'm happy to be doing it in the end. I'm doing it, right? And I feel happy to have done it, and there's nothing else really I'd rather be doing. And it's really all I want to do is to be pursuing virtue and goodness. So I think that's how I take it. That's how I interpret it. Kind of single-mindedness, focusing on one thing. And so that's how it progresses to the fifth perfection. They're saying, look, this joyful effort, it turns into kind of a single-mindedness. Once we get into the fourth perfection, it's like, I enjoy doing good, and I just want to do good. And this single-mindedness really develops about, I just want to be a good person and live a good life and do good things for people. And I feel that. I mean, I feel like, it doesn't matter where I work or what I do. It's just, serve people and do goodness in the world. And that's really what I care about. That's all I care about. The rest is window dressing, Doesn't matter what the setting is and what's on the stage. It's acting out the same play, whatever the props are, right? And so the point they make there is that this kind of single-mindedness then naturally leads into the perfection of the concentration of wisdom, concentration of meditation, perfection of concentration, meditation, right? So having this concentration in our daily life, night and day, of doing what we enjoy, which is virtue and goodness, naturally leads to a single-mindedness and meditating well. Having single point in mind and focused mind and meditating well. And so number 5 obviously naturally leads to number 6, and that we can't see emptiness without being in a deep state of meditation. Unless we're pursuing the 5th perfection, we can't you can't succeed in achieving the sixth perfection, which it's impossible. So, and they also say that every single movement from one spiritual level to the other, basically, it happens in a deep state of meditation. So without being in a deep state of meditation, without pursuing concentration, the perfection of concentration, we can't really progress from spiritual level to spiritual level. So if we're not on a meditation cushion, then it's going to take a long time to progress. And it's like going through the levels of the path are like rungs on a ladder. And so you have to be in meditation to go from one rung to one rung to one rung up to enlightenment. So if we're not on the cushion, we're basically sitting at the bottom of the ladder on the first rung or below the first rung for a long time, not going anywhere. If we're not meditating well, not meditating nicely. So, okay, so as we move up through the bodhisattva bhumis and levels, each one is marked by the extraordinary ability to practice one of those six perfections. And bodhisattva basically has two things on their mind. They want to reach the highest spiritual level they can to help other people, and that's going to be the purpose of the whole life. I'm living my life now to help other people. The reason I'm here, the reason I'm going to get out of bed, is to help as many people as possible. And then Master Shantideva goes on to in the text, he goes into how to behave when your mental afflictions come up. He said, if you want to cut your stimuli and be able to focus more on the content of your mind, then keep your eyes down, cut your level of sensory input, and stay focused on what's in your mind and what your mind's doing instead of what's coming in through your senses, right? But so then he says, well, look, if you're out in the world and these various situations come up, then here's what to do. And basically he goes through the mental afflictions, and he says, when you're out in the world and you catch yourself in some kind of misdeed, basically, he says, be like a piece of wood. And they're very beautiful verses in the guide. It says, just be like a piece of wood. He says, be like a bump on a log, freeze, basically. He has a long list of situations in which a Buddhist must freeze, and to stay mindful. So he says, if you start to say something, if you start to do something that you shouldn't be, just freeze. Just be like a piece of wood, freeze. Don't move. Right? Mid-sentence, just shut up. Just freeze. Doesn't matter. And it's like we'll be talking to a Dharma friend, and they'll catch themselves in mid-sentence and cut themselves off and like, oh, let me tell you about what happened. And they're like, oh, no, I'm not. No, tell me, right? Don't do that. When someone is being virtuous and they stop themselves from a misdeed, be supportive, right? And when your thoughts come up in our mind, right, then to do something or say something, just stop, just cut it out. So Master Shantideva goes through a list of things to do to freeze. And I'm not going to do the Tibetan, but it's on the board. Chakpa is liking something ignorantly. If we like something ignorantly, meaning we do something unethical to get it, then just freeze. We talked about it before. Throwa means if you dislike things ignorantly. Again, if you have the level of self-existent view and ignorance where you would hurt someone to avoid something, do something unethical to get away from something, then just freeze. Like we chase after what we want and we push away what we don't want, right? Sometimes pushing away what we don't want involves force or aggression or anger or whatever, right? So just freeze, don't do that, Master Shantideva says. Whenever those thoughts come up, just freeze. And then Nagyal, pride, this is not the good kind of pride, this is the I king kind of pride. And he says, well, when you feel proud, when you feel like you're better than other people, you're smarter, more beautiful, more clever, more dharmic, whatever, then, just freeze. Gyakpa is a kind of conceit, feeling superior. And Master Shantideva says, look, when you're starting to get superior and conceited, then just be like a piece of wood. Stop doing it. Sangdruwa, criticizing others. It's when we go out of our way to try to publicize other people's faults, embarrass them, criticize them, make sure other people are aware of their mistakes or their problems, right? To in some way undermine them, right? And somebody makes a mistake at work, and you got to make sure that other people know about it, right? So he says, just freeze, just be like a piece of wood. Some kind of malice. Yogyu is deceiving others. hiding our bad qualities, putting on a facade. The boss walks in and you hit the panic button and bring up another screen on the computer, right? Freeze, don't hit that panic button. It'd be interesting to see what happens. So, anyway. So he says, don't try to trick other people, deceive them. Don't try to pretend you have qualities you don't have. Just freeze. Doc 2, praising yourself. I'm so wonderful. And if we look at the conversations, right? Most of our conversations, like 75% of I'm so wonderful and 25% you're not. Right? As Hector would say, but enough about me. How do you like my hair? All right. This is praising yourself, right? And it's not obvious. It's usually subtle if you pay attention. Like for me, it manifests as I monopolize the conversation. I got a lot to say. I got important things to say. You got to listen to me because I'm the one. I'm the important one. Obviously, I should be doing the talking, and I should be interrupting, and you should be listening. Right? So if we really pay attention, there's so many different levels that this sense of praising ourselves happens and comes in, and we have to really be mindful about it, right? So, taking over a conversation, talking about the things we like, interrupting other people, not being a good listener. It's a form of putting down other people and praising ourselves, and Shenmue is putting down other people, right? And so, there are all these stories in the Vinaya of putting down other people, where there's horrible stories where, they say that someone appeared to be doing something wrong in a fairly minor way, and, another monk criticized them and put him down. And then, they took, 1,000 rebirths in the hells, and then they end up saying, yeah, that was me in my past life. This is usually the Buddha saying in the Jataka tales. That was me in my past life where I criticized the other monk because I thought he was doing something wrong. He was actually doing something holy, and I couldn't read his mind, and I didn't understand. And, and I had like 10 million years of suffering as a result of something. It's kind of depressing. So anyway, just be careful not to put down other people. Obviously we have to resist evil. We have to stop people who are hurting others or us, but you have to do it without judging, right? Okay. And then Shewa is scolding. Yelling at someone, telling them they're doing something wrong or something wrong with them. We've got to focus on our own mind, right? Focus on our own state of mind. There's a lifetime of material to work just in our own mind. We don't need to concentrate on other people and what they're doing wrong and what their issues are. Don't worry about other people, right? Spend our time on our mental afflictions. And so...
John, did you say Shen? Which one is Shen?
Shenwa is scolding.
Shewa.
Shewa? Shewa, sorry, no N. Shewa. Shenmue is putting down others.
Okay.
Shewa is scolding, yelling at others. Okay. And then there are the 4 points of the practice of virtue that are also mentioned. Not to yell back when someone yells at you. Right? Not to hit back when someone hits you. We won't go through them all. But the homework asks for 6, so there's more.
Sashi Fuki Jushin Meto Cham Viram Shin Yudegam Adi Sangye Shindu Iteruagi Drokunanda Shimla Sripasho Yam Ratnamanda Kamyatayami Dikeoku Sunam Yeshe Tsotsokshi Sunam Yeshe Lejunwe Dhampa Kuni Tupasho.
Bring your awareness to the holiness, holy being that you've manifested, that you've invited, that you've brought forth. And invite them to bless you and to bless your mind streams, see them becoming smaller and smaller, small, glowing ball of light, entering your heart, blessing your mind, heart. By the goodness of what we've done here this evening, may every virtue immediately come to pass. May every non-virtue immediately be eliminated. May every being, every realm, instantly experience total bliss all the time. My pleasure. Thank you for coming. See you next week. Class number 10.
I really don't care, like,